Okay, hello everyone. We start this panel that came together ad hoc and is hosted by Political Science Department and CEU to talk about Ukraine and the war of Russia against Ukraine. As Russian aggression against Ukraine escalates, we would like to discuss the situation, the short and long-term perspectives with several outstanding experts on Ukraine, Russian and European foreign affairs. We will talk about what is happening, what are the most probable scenarios to evolve, and what are the implications for security, for democracy in Europe, and for the open society. So let me start with our first speaker who was able to join us directly from Ukraine, Professor Olexiy Haran, professor at Kyiv Mohyla Academy and research director at Ilko Kucheriv Democratic Initiatives Foundation, initially based in Kyiv and now from the north of Ukraine. Olexiy, the floor is yours. Can you kind of update us on situation, how it looks like there, what are the steps of the Ukrainian government you expect, what are the moods in the society?
What the West is going to do, actually, to rebuff Russian aggression. Yeah. Okay, let me start from what's going on around him. There are explosions all the time. So I'm at the north of Kyiv, actually, which is not far away from the place where there are fights right now. Yesterday, my daughter called me and asked if she had to go to bomb shelter. And I said that, look, it's very improbable that Russians would shell civilian buildings. And that's what happened on the left bank of Kyiv. And my daughter lives in the west bank of, west bank, right bank of Kyiv. So now I do not have connection with her. So I hope that she's in the shelter right now. I'm still trying, to connect to her. So you understand how it's serious and emotional. It's very, very hard to be here. So what's going on? First of all, I urge you, don't believe what Russian officials are saying at all. At all. There's no a line of truth in what they are saying in general about Ukraine and specifically the situation on the Ukraine. So from what we hear from officials during last day, around 800 Russian soldiers were killed and about 60 Ukrainian soldiers. There are captured Russian soldiers. As far as I understand now, there are no captured Ukrainians. So at least Ukrainians are not surrendering. So it's totally different situation with 2014 when part of the police in the occupied Donbass, they moved to Russians. So no, it's not the case at all. So at this point, no regional center of Ukraine is occupied. There are serious fights around Chernihiv and Sumy in the north of the country. Russian propaganda is saying that Kyiv is encircled, and there are some news channels which are repeating it. Yesterday I was on Indian TV. This is crazy. Kyiv is encircled. Kabul, Kyiv the next. Invasion is about almost complete, and all this Russian stuff. No, so we need to say very clearly that even if Kyiv occupies, there would be continued resistance. Now, it's very clear that the situation in Donbass was only a pretext for Russians. Actually, they didn't start major offensives there. So I think it was using, to divert attention from the north. They are coming mostly from Belarus and also Russian-Ukrainian border. So first of all, it's necessary now to increase pressure on Belarus. If Belarus would be able to stop it, then it would be huge huge help to us, because the main threat is from there, from the north. It's clearly understandable right now that the aim of Russia is to capture Kyiv and to install the puppet government here. The puppet government, which would be totally vassal of Russia. You know, we have some pro-Russian politicians. Nobody trusts them, so it would be fake. It would be fake. It would be just a cover-up for Russia in existing control of Ukraine. We know what Putin is saying and Peskov is saying, that they're going to have denazification of Ukraine. So it seems that they're going to have repressions, same kind as in Crimea and in the Russian-occupied parts of Donbass, totalitarian repressions. My friends told me that definitely I am on the list. I'm not sure how important I am for Russians, but probably yes. What Russia occupied Chernobyl, invaded and occupied Chernobyl station, which is very dangerous because there are a lot of nuclear fallouts, nuclear storages there. I don't know why Russia needed it, to occupy it. So this is a huge question actually to Europe, what Russians are going to take to have it. So Putin behaves like Nazi Germany, totally, even symbolically. They attacked us early in the morning by cruise missiles. Putin cowered. So, in 2000, he's sitting somewhere in his bunker. Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014 after Sochi Olympic Games, and they did it in the same way now. So they waited for the end of Olympic Games and attacked. What else? So we continue to fight. Unfortunately, we are only to fight.
You started to elaborate what the Western can do.
Yes, that's what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that we are unfortunately alone to fight. The sanctions which were announced are belated. If the West introduced it, oh, by the way, not to forget about, I will come to the West, and not to forget about the reaction of Russians. Many Russian colleagues are writing letters that they are ashamed, and this is good. We saw this, protest in Moscow, not very numerous. But look, regarding position of Russians, a lot of them is to be blamed in the same way as Putin. They are supporting Putin. We have relatives, many of us have relatives in Russia. Somebody are calling us and saying, yes, we are ashamed what's going on. Somebody are saying, you received Ukrainian nationalists. And somebody even doesn't bother to call, which is exactly, they are not calling and asking these stupid questions. Are you okay? How are you today? So when I come to sanctions, look, in 2014, the West said, no, we cannot punish Russian citizens. They are not responsible. They are responsible as well, because they are voting, they are supporting this course. The West accepted Russia back to Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe because it's necessary to have legal cases in the courts. Come on, guys, do you seriously believe in defense of democracy in Russia? No, I think Russia should be punished. There should be tough sanctions against Russia itself, not only Putin, Russia. If Russian citizens are banned from going to Europe, if Russian citizens would feel that their economy is crumbled, then there may be some reaction. Otherwise, nothing can be done. The West, so sanctions came too late. If there were sanctions in 2014, 2015, 2018, even 3 months before this aggression, it could be stopped, I believe. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. I'm not an economist. It's difficult for me to judge what would be the direct effect of these sanctions. We understand that this will have a dramatic consequences for Russian economy, but later. So we need support right now, to stop what Putin is doing. Well, and there are also, we expect from Turkey to close the straits. We asked the West to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. There are not enough muscles in the West. When I hear that we are not NATO member to defend ourselves, look, the West Berlin, was it officially part of Germany, of Western Germany? No. Was it part of NATO? No. But the West decided that yes, we are going to defend in the most serious times of crisis over Berlin. Мамуся, я даю интервью. Да, звонила, все хорошо. Все, пока. I lied to my mother that my daughter called me. So, at this point, this is not enough what the West is doing. This is full stop, what I can say. By the way, Germany responsibility. Germany is saying all the time, yes, we are responsible for World War II, we are responsible to Russia, we are responsible to Ukraine. Look what's going on right now in Ukraine. Full-scale war in the center of Europe. Is Germany responsible for that? Rhetoric question. You know the answer. I think Germany is responsible. By the way, Putin is trying to humiliate not only Ukraine, it tries to humiliate the West to show that it's not credible, and also to humiliate Chancellor Scholz and President Macron, who were engaged in this shuttle diplomacy. Well, we appreciate what they did. Putin doesn't appreciate it at all. He simply said it doesn't matter for us. So we are continuing to fight. We need support.
You know, there are voices in the West that suggest that probably it would be a kind of better choice for Ukraine to surrender to save lives. So this is a kind of
I don't know who is saying that. Who is saying that? No, say directly. Who?
So
for me to know.
So I think German politicians and in the Austrian.
Who from German? Who of German politicians? What party? Government, opposition, who?
André, government, I think.
Well, I haven't heard about that, but I'm very sure that this is on the minds of some people here. Honestly.
Look, the government will not, the Ukrainian government will not surrender. That's for sure. I am critical of Zelensky. He made a lot of mistakes. The country is not fully prepared for the war. That's clear. But now he's doing what he is to do. He's working together with opposition. You know, the parliament voted in constitutional majority to establish a state of war. I think they are not going to surrender. You may pick up, some people, people are people. Some are cowards, some do not have, some would like to survive. So, it always happens. It always happened during the war. But in general, Ukrainian government will not surrender. So again, Ukrainian soldiers will continue to fight. Even if Russia occupies Ukraine, it would be hard for Russia to maintain it. Very hard for Russia to maintain. So we continue. We need to have several days more. At least several days more. 800 of Russian soldiers just one day. This is huge. I think that some of Russians are demoralized, actually, some soldiers. They didn't expect Ukrainians would resist. So we need time. We need to win time.
Yeah, they're not motivated. They're not motivated.
Yeah.
Yes, it's visible, very visible.
Can I ask a question? It's actually from my sister, who is now sitting in Kharkiv, which is eastern Ukraine, and
Yes.
they are just hiding from bombs. And she is a pediatrician. She is not sophisticated in political science issues, and she is asking about probable scenarios. So what are the worst scenarios? What are the good scenarios? So, for example, she's asking that what if they take Kyiv, that what does it mean for Kharkiv and eastern Ukraine? Can you comment on scenarios?
Yeah, from military point of view, they can occupy Kharkiv, I think. Now they're not able to do it, but we don't know how it will develop. Definitely Russia is larger in forces, so it may happen. But
Olexiy, you mentioned about ordinary people. Can you elaborate about what are the moods there?
well, look, you know that there are a lot of refugees, so people try to evacuate themselves. Some stayed here. Shops are closed right now. Fortunately, there's still water, internet connection, energy, and heating. Well, moods are different, but the main mood, you look, Russia is crazy. Russia is crazy what they are doing, you know, bombing Ukrainian cities. And again, people are going to territorial self-defense. Not all, but a lot.
Okay. You know, we are in the academic community here, and we are not Western governments, but we would like to help as far as we can. Do you see anything that Western academic community can do?
Definitely. Urge to interfere, urge for harder sanctions, for more supply of munition, for financial support, for humanitarian support, because, you know, so now we have the problems with transportation routes and so on and so forth. So if, you know, if we are if there would be no supply in shops, and you know, it will create a humanitarian catastrophe. It's already a humanitarian catastrophe, but it could expand tremendously. I would like also to ask you if you can. So, for example, I made a kind of presentation now. Please cut it for me so I may send it to others, you know, because I cannot repeat all the time, you know, these things. Also, I am pretty sure that my colleagues will say right words again. And please send it to us so we would be able to spread it and spread the word. Russian propaganda continues with all this fake. And again, it's Goebbels type propaganda. Goebbels type.
Olexiy, we have also the question about countries in the neighborhood that are probably the parts of Europe, but also not the parts of NATO and EU, Moldova, Georgia. What are their positions there? Also, what is the position of Belarus itself? Is there any kind of actions on their side?
They open the border for Russian tanks. So what I can say more? So this appears to most dangerous direction of defense because it's very close. It's very close. And now Russian paratroopers, they landed. They were not able to land near Kyiv, but so they landed in Gomel, very close to Ukraine. So what can we say about Belarus' position? It's clear. They open the way for aggression. So pressure, well, I don't know how it will work, but pressure Belarus. What was the first question? Reaction
Moldova,
of the countries.
Moldova
opened the way for Ukrainian refugees. You know, the countries declared their support to Ukraine, yes. What else can they do? You know, not much, frankly speaking, not much. What can make a difference is the European Union, Germany, France, United States. You know pretty well. pretty well. Ban visas for Russia, expel the relatives of the Russian elite. Putin daughters are in Europe, Lavrov daughter is in the United States, and all other guys. You know, you need to be tough, not like ice cream. You know, typical Western, I'm sorry to say, this is not politically correct. You know, we have dialogue, maybe, you know, it's better to talk and we leave room for maneuver. Come on, guys.
Volodymyr, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think there was also a question about China's role, and it was not very. It was, I think, quite quiet for a while. So, can you comment on China's role in the?
China's position is clear now. They take into account Russian concerns over security. China is benefiting from it. If Russia occupies Ukraine and the West is humiliated, then it opens the way for China. China can do the same. Also, Russia under sanctions, so Russia will need to go where? Asking for support? To China. China is in a very good position. Sees a weakened Russia, which is transformed into younger partner of China. So China is benefiting from what's happening. Unfortunately, very cynical position of China. And again, please explain to the West that all the talks about, you know, Donbass. First of all, let's forget about these talks about separatists, breakaway republics, self-proclaimed republics, Ukraine crisis. It's not Ukraine crisis. It's Russia's war. We are talking about it since 2014, and what we're saying is, no, it's not explosives. Not the war. It's not the war. Ukrainians are exaggerate. You need to find the dialogue with people from there, you know, peace building measures and all these things.
Olexiy, there is also a question. Do you think Russia stops in Ukraine? Is there a kind of threat that Poland and Romania are the next?
They are in much better situation, definitely, you know about that they are NATO members. So it's much more difficult for Russia. Even small countries like the Baltics, they are safe. But in general, it shows, you know, if Putin shows the West is, look, then it would be possible. He will continue the pressure, dividing the West, splitting the West, dividing countries left against right, exit, Brexits, and so on and so forth. He will play on these divisions. And what is important, by the way, is that under the Cold War, you know, the public mood in society, people understood that necessary to be ready for tough measures. We need to have these tough measures, but people understood that. You know that now I'm really surprised when my special message is for the left forces or center-left forces in Europe who are kind of, you know, Putin versteht and Putin understands this. I have a question. Do you remember, and I'm asking social democrats, always asking, Labor from Britain, social democrats from Germany, do you know what was the formal reason for creation of the First International? Do you know, guys? No, because, well, I've studied in the Soviet Union, so I know. This is interesting. The formal reason to create, you know, this international first, what we call now First International, was a support to Polish people in their uprising against Russian Tsarism. That was a formal reason. They used it in order to say, okay, we need solidarity. So this is my question to those people who consider themselves left or center left, who remember the legacy of social democracy. Unfortunately, I don't see huge manifestations. You know, I like when these anti-globalists, they are protesting against capitalists and oligarchs and United States. Look what you have right now, the aggression in Europe. Where are the protests?
Olexiy, thank you. There is also one question, and then we move to other speakers. Do you see any measures that NATO, EU, or US can impose or implement besides sanctions? So is there anything else?
Well, there could be different kind of sanctions. You know, when Germany say, by the way, I do not know, the United States are not going to make transfers in dollars, euro. What is the reaction of the EU? Is it possible for Russia to continue transfers and in the EU? Oh, I mean in euro, in euro. What is the EU position? So Russia should be blocked from using these currencies, should be blocked from SWIFT. So personal sanctions, again, I've mentioned already, to maximize personal sanctions, but also to make sanctions to Russian economy in general. And besides that, definitely, I've already said so, everything which would be of help to Ukraine, and try to change the balance, the straits. Close your flights with Russia.
Okay, thank you. André,
freeze Russian assets, not only of oligarchs, Russian state assets in the West.
André, there were a lot of discussion yesterday in the EU institutions, but also in Germany about Olexiy, thank you very much for joining us. Stay safe, and we will send you the video as soon as we have it. Thank you. Keep in touch.
Thank you so much.
Береги себе.
André, there were a lot of this discussion, which sanctions are possible, which sanctions are effective, and there were a lot of promises before yesterday to kind of impose a very comprehensive, very painful, massive sanctions. The outcome is everything else than massive and comprehensive. Yeah, so I mean, at least as you heard from Olexiy, the expectations were different.
Expectations are high. Yeah.
So can you explain us the rationale? Why Western and German position are as we see them?
Okay. Yeah, guys. Hi. Thank you for inviting me. Of course, very timely and good to talk. We need to see, first of all, that things are unfolding in a very fast manner. Yeah. I mean, look at where we've been Monday morning, where we've been Sunday evening, right? And where we are right now. So sometimes if one wants to really analyze things and take emotions out, which is very hard, one needs to take a break a little bit. It's even hard for me. I need to talk to people in between. I'm myself married to Ukrainians, so I'm really busy with personal issues. But the thing is, I think what happened yesterday is more complex than commonly now perceived. When I speak to sanctions experts, and I did it this morning inside my own institute, they said that things are not as black and white as this is painted in official media discourse. The thing is that Biden was right in saying that what they did with blocking sanctions in the banking sector is much tougher than SWIFT. Yeah, the SWIFT debate is to a certain degree inflated because, look, this is not a very targeted sanction. you can get around this by older systems, telex, and something like this. It creates, of course, it would create some transaction costs, but it's not it's not a real weapon. A real weapon is really the blocking sanctions, where basically the bulk of the Russian banking sector is not able to do anything in dollars, in euro any longer. Yeah. No transactions. They're completely out of the international business. Yeah? And this goes now with VTB, with VEB, yeah? And other banks cannot do any transactions in dollars. Others cannot borrow money. Yeah. So this has been huge. On the other hand, of course, there is the assumption where we all are a little bit kind of, but it's not properly communicated. It's just a rumor that the US president and European leaders, they want to hold an ass back for now. Yeah, so they want to have one card at least before they go full blown. Yeah, with additional measures, maybe even to convince Putin in a very last stage scenario about letting guys leave, letting the Ukrainian government leave. So there are rumors like this, and I cannot properly validate those rumors. So I don't think that the sanctions are very weak. Problem is they are not very well communicated. One also needs to see this is a lot about technical things, so it's also hard to communicate. Yeah. And I also think this, my last point as for the sanctions is we need to, in the West here, especially in Germany, we need to change the debate a little bit, the discourse, well, not only a little bit, we need to profoundly change it towards direct support. The sanctions issue is to a certain degree now void, obsolete, yeah, because we have an invasion already. Putin will not be stopped from occupying Ukraine if he wants to do so. Yeah, he will not get back to the negotiation table with that or with this or that measure, an additional bank, an additional person being sanctioned. This will not happen. What the only thing which could help right now is switching the discourse towards more weapons deliveries, to maybe even only talk for the moment, to put this on the table, what Ukrainians suggest with the no-fly zone. Yeah, what Haran told about the Montreux Convention and Turkey's possibility to close the straits. Yeah, those things now need to be properly discussed without being in fear of Russian retaliation. Yeah? It's not possible for Russians, and it's unthinkable that they will attack the West. Yeah. This is something which is this is propaganda material. Yeah, one doesn't need to believe in it, but this is the support, this is the discourse Ukraine now needs.
Okay, thank you, André. So I just did not have a chance to introduce you, but you are research associate at German Institute for International and Security Affairs in Berlin, and so you have the hand on the pulse of German foreign policies, I would say. Yes.
I'm trying. It's hard.
Yeah. So let me give the floor to Maryna, who is now in London, Associate Fellow at Royal United Services Institute for Defense and Security Studies. So Maryna, thank you for joining our panel today. The approach of UK and US, while agreed with EU, seems to be slightly stronger. Can you explain us a little bit more about what is the rationale and how you think this approach can help Ukraine to gain a couple of more days, more hours, as Haran asked for?
Thank you very much, Ina, and thank you for having me speaking today at this event. I see 160 attendees, young people, I suppose, from CEU, students, researchers, etc. So I'm very happy that there is such a high attention to what is happening. And I think what we are witnessing now is that 2 days ago, we woke up to the demise of the world as we know. And I think it's not just a mere figure of speech. And I'm not trying to be overly pathetic, but as a political scientist myself, as a security expert, I've realized how profound and tectonic those changes are that we are witnessing at the moment, when basically democracy is not on the winning side. And this has become very obvious now that it's the autocracies that took the lead in the international relations and militarily changing the world as we know it. And I think that we will see now that we are on the defensive. I'm speaking about the democratic societies, that we are very much on the defensive. And speak even about Russia, who is the largest conventional forces power in Europe. And this whole debate today is about what we do with Russia. We are all, I'm sure here, are internally conflicted, looking at Ukraine, how we can help, what we can do. And we are conflicted because we know that we, the Western societies, cannot do much because there are certain constraints that are imposed on us by the very system of the international relations. And we know that Western societies are not going to fight with Russia because this is a very, very, this is apocalyptic scenario. So supporting Ukraine at the moment, helping it defend itself, I think, raising the stakes for Russia in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian front lines and battlefields, this is what the West is currently trying to do. Apart from the sanctions that we've discussed already today, that can be biting. I will be just saying, and we are all aware here, I think, that sanctions will not stop the war. They are not working overnight. So what they will do, they will probably and most probably they will make Russian economy pay a very high cost for becoming basically or self-declaring itself a rogue state, a pariah state. And now it needs to pay the cost for what it is doing at the moment. So the sanctions are likely, of course, to work in the middle or long term. What is quite immediate concern, of course, is whether Ukraine at all exists as we know it now at the moment when the sanctions start to work. And even let me say that our cost-benefit analysis, our perceptions quite differ from the perceptions of Kremlin. So what we consider to be a sufficient deterrence, something that can, constrain some limitations imposed. Kremlin, as it turned out, we had our doubts, but it turned out that it's able to absorb much higher costs that we anticipated just 2 days ago. So we were thinking that that Russia can be dissuaded from acting in Ukraine, but what was being done? But it's obvious that it was not sufficient, or at least Kremlin did not perceive it sufficient enough. So there are lots of questions around this. So on defense support, of course, it's very important now to help Ukraine withstand the aggression. Professor Haran described the dire situation Ukraine is in now. The first day of attack, Ukrainian armed forces successfully repelled attacks from different directions with 140 people, civilians and military alike, dead. And the casualties, of course, are rising as we speak. But again, we already see you asked about the Western defense assistance, how these Western weapons that has been supplied just in recent months and weeks, it is being put to use in Ukraine as we speak. This is very important to understand. The reports that we've seen, the videos, the footage, that how those javelins and stingers, how the British anti-tank weapons are being used there at the moment. So this is I think this is again the confirmation of how important this defense has been. What Ukraine doing is at the moment, it's talking to its partners in the West to boost this military defense, because 2,000 systems, anti-tank weapons systems from Britain, from the UK, that was supplied. It's important, but now it needs to be increased, because if we are talking about a protracted, long-term, so if Ukraine is not collapsing in the day, and it's very likely that due to this, internal drive to defend this motherland, it can be, and due to the insurgency that the Ukrainian nation is prepared to, something that I think President Putin has very badly miscalculated, that it's going to be, Russia is very likely to be bogged down in this conflict. So in this situation, this military and defense help is very, very crucial. Unfortunately, I'm going now to talk about the issue why many of us and colleagues in the West are conflicted, is that some of the requests that Ukraine thinks that it's morally, positioned to ask for, West will not do. Ukraine asks for the no-fly zone above its seas. So it asks for this, and we see that it's not going to be done.
It's a declaration of war. So this is...
Yes, or Ukraine asked about the SWIFT. We've discussed this already. Somebody sent the link here that SWIFT, the day was inflated, and the sanctions that were already adopted, they are very likely to be an upgraded version of what was actually expected. So, there are certain things which explain the bitterness that President Zelensky yesterday or tonight addressed the Ukrainian people and the international community, saying that we are alone. This feeling of standing alone, of this grim determination to survive at whatever cost, and this resignation feeling. I think these are the main, feelings that are dominant now in the Ukrainian society. So what I want to say that we see the talks going now with Ukraine at the moment, how it can be helped. So I think this is really very important for the Western societies and the governments alike now, is to think about the ways that, of course, realizing that Ukraine will be the one shouldering this, task to defend itself. But it's the Western help that can be crucial at the moment. So I think it's very important. Last point I will make here, before probably others, questions are taken, is that unfortunately, the time of diplomacy is over, as we've realized. In the last 2 weeks, the West and Ukraine, they were trying to save this fragile peace by negotiating with Russia. And unfortunately, what we've heard in Kremlin, that the security guarantees package, the ultimatum that Kremlin made to the West, it's not a menu to be picked from, as they said. So you cannot talk about the strategic stability, but that we all were prepared to be talking about. You cannot be talking about other, limitations of the military exercises somewhere in the proximity to the Russian borders, etc., or non-deployment of the Western, missiles in Ukraine so far. So these are non-starters for Russia. So it was not prepared. The main thing was about NATO. The main thing was about feeling historical grievances, that Russia was a lost party to the Cold War. And it looks like this trauma, because we obviously see that President Putin thinks that this trauma now needs to be remedied. This trauma drives the Russian foreign policy now. Unfortunately, I'm speaking now to the students coming from different backgrounds and nationalities. All our nations had their historical traumas, and many of our nations managed to convert those historical traumas into some prosperous future, into the promise to our citizens. Russia did not manage, and it's the biggest drama and trauma, I think, for the Russian people now. They didn't manage to transform this historical trauma into some kind of reconciling narrative with the past, looking into the future. No, they are ruining their own future and the future of Ukrainian people and the future of all the rest of the world. I'll stop here.
Maryna, thank you. It's a kind of great perspectives, I must say. Still, going back to, I have a follow-up going back to UK positions. So as it seems to be a kind of more stronger than the EU, where we hear a lot of divergent opinions and approaches what to do. Can the UK shape a sort of coalition of willing to provide more military support, probably more direct action? And who could be the parts of this coalition of willing?
Yeah, I mean, talking about more direct action. I mean, it was clearly said, even after the invasion or the start of this big attack, that sending the troops on the ground to Ukraine is not in the cards. So this is what we are working with. This is what we have. The military support, sure, it's going to happen. And as we speak, the talks are on, thinking, as far as I know, with the UK even. So the first time ever, the format 2+2 ministers of defense and 2 ministers of foreign affairs talking what can be done. So it's very likely that the military assistance will be increased, and there will be other supplies, hopefully, of the weapons to help our Ukrainian armed forces. And it's very likely that, I mean, the ones who follow the UK foreign policy, they know that post-Brexit UK and the global Britain agenda is about being the assertive security power, is about leading, that, yes, it's out of the EU, but it's not out of Europe. So it's going to shape this response. And I think that the government in the UK now is trying to do exactly the same. And even yesterday, when they were announcing the package of sanctions, they were saying that they are going to be coalescing with other European powers and with the US and other like-minded nations about basically excluding Russia from the SWIFT. So they were going to be talking about, this something which were considered by many in Europe, like Germany, as a very nuclear option. So they were ready to, to brace themselves for those harder mission, let's say. And yes, I anticipate that UK and the US might be the leading voices, but the EU response, I mean, I think that what we've heard there is also, I mean, EU managed to show the solidarity, and in terms of sanctions, that it managed to, have a unified front, despite the reports we've heard that, the SWIFT, there were objections of several nations to this measure, etc. So far, what we see is really, we see a response, and now it's the time for actions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maryna. André, yesterday there were a lot of discussion about not only what sanctions or any kind of Western action would cost Russia, but also there were suggestions probably to think about more a kind of direct question to the Western societies and governments, what they are ready to pay. So do you see any kind of changes in terms, what are the readiness of the Western governments, EU specifically, or Germany more narrow, to suffer in this conflict, in this war?
Yeah, it's already clear that the decision by Germany or Italians to block the SWIFT cutoff is related to that. Yeah? The governments are afraid of imminent economic losses, yeah, from financial transfers with the Russian Federation. I mean, you need to see that all the oil and gas business is conducted via SWIFT also. I think if I get the news right, I mean, the problem is that things are unfolding very fast, and it's almost not possible to acquire any or to get a hold of any kind of public surveys what the public thinks about that. I mean, we know from 2014 that there can be very sudden changes also of public opinion in relation to Russia, and a lot changed, especially the trust in Putin since 2014 basically collapsed in German among Germans. Yeah, but when you ask slightly other questions about Russia, especially when it comes to the economy, yeah, especially if it comes to the trade in commodities, then it becomes more difficult. I mean, the whole issue is that Germans are very much used to their state being a trading state. Yeah. About foreign policy basically conducted in a single market or worldwide economic bubble. Yeah. And now to accept the fact that, especially with this in mind, with our economic interests in mind, but with our long-term economic interests in mind, we need to apply a more holistic approach to foreign policy. We need to accept the fact that we do have enemies. Yeah, that we are not living in this bubble any longer, that we do have enemies, that there are states, there are governments, there are regimes who do not like the way we live, who do not like the approach we are dealing with the rest of the world. Yeah, and this is very hard, and we have, before this crisis, or when the crisis was still not in this kind of escalation phase, colleagues and me, or it was my assessment that this is only another crisis, unfortunately, which kind of drives the learning process among the German elites and the German public. But it won't be the final crisis, the final step towards a more responsible and not only economically driven foreign policy. Unfortunately, it will be a step towards something else, yet another step. Yeah, but this goes very slowly. The peace dividend is too much in the minds of acting Germans. It might be different among the youth already. I mean, I was so much surprised how many young people showed up yesterday in Berlin for the demonstration. I have the impression that this generation, it really kind of senses what's going on. Yeah, but the older generations, they live in those times of the peace dividend, in this comfortable bubble, and they just want to stay there. Yeah. Yeah, this is a kind of an interesting coalition, yeah, between the bulk of political elites and the older generations among German society here. So I'm rather skeptic, to be honest. I'm rather skeptic about this. It will need much more in order to change this majority view. It will basically, and this is why I think Putin would never do it. It would take an attack on Central European states in order to change that more or less suddenly. For that, Ukraine is not enough, unfortunately, as crazy as it sounds.
What about personal sanctions against Putin? He's still not on the list. Do you kind of know the reason why not? And
no, I don't know why he's not personally on the list. But look, I mean, I don't want to open a discussion about Putin's personality, but I think we agree that even if I consider what I've read in research about him, even if I consider Navalny's videos when he was still openly able to act in Russia, I don't have the impression that you can hurt Putin with economic sanctions, that he is about wealth, corruption. Yeah, this is what he allows. This is a system he created, of course. Yeah, he plays with that. This is a major interest, a major instrument for him. Yeah, to assemble the elite, to build an elite circle, and to make this elite circle dependent on him personally. But this is and that's why it's important to stake up sanctions against this inner circle. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Security Council footage of this week, you could see in the minutes, in the faces of people, how they feared what would happen to their own wealth right now. But I don't think that personally Putin is interested in that. For him, this is the primacy of Russian security interests, of Russia's geopolitical position. This is what really drives him around. Yeah, I don't think for him this doesn't play a role. Yeah.
Okay, Volodymyr, there are some questions in the chat. Probably, can you sum up?
Yes, sure. There were many questions about Putin and Russian boundaries, where and what can stop him and where he can be stopped. I think there were quite many answers. And I think that there is a question, probably we can address it to Maryna, and it's about just. And somebody wrote that sanctions will hit people in Russia who are against the war and who were protesting yesterday. And it's kind of against of liberal values, and these people shouldn't be punished for the decision they didn't make. So that what can be solution for this dilemma?
I mean, the discussions about sanctions always entail the discussions about whom exactly we hurt. How can we make the sanctions smarter? How do we ensure that we hurt the authoritarian leader, but not the people? And I mean, and I don't see a really clear-cut solution to this issue, because when we see the protesters, go into the squares in Russia, and we see their courage and braveness, I believe, since they know what will come, after they openly voice their opinions. So, of course, we sympathize with those people, understanding that probably, the financial sanctions, it's all, I mean, the economic sanctions will all probably are going to harm their lives too. But on the other hand, what is the other way that we are dealing with this, with the states that are in open aggression, military aggression? So I don't think that we've found any other solution to this issue. So I believe that yes, this is unfortunately what President Putin probably was also thought that this Russian society is going to bear this cost. He was very comfortable, obviously, thinking that knowing that the sanctions will come, that the Russian society needs to be. So I don't think that the parties that impose the sanctions on Russia should feel the culprits, rather than thinking who is the culprit here in this situation. The state who actually started and continues with the military aggression. So, and I believe the measures, I'm advancing a bit here in this argument. I'm thinking the measures that we are seeing now, trying to enhance the defenses in the eastern flank of NATO, a bit of different topic, but also I saw somewhere in the chat somebody asking about that. It's very important what NATO is doing at the moment. And it's not overreaction, obviously, as many could suggest. Okay, isn't it an overreaction? Yes, somebody can perceive that Ukrainian crisis, as it's being called. Even so, I think terminologically, we are all scientists here and academics. It's a very wrong expression to use, Ukraine crisis. We are talking about Ukrainian-Russian war. So it's nothing, it's nowhere close to Ukrainian sanctions crisis, because otherwise we are speaking about it in the terms of the internal turmoil, and it's not an internal turmoil. So I think it's not an overreaction what NATO is doing now in terms of trying to boost its capabilities in the eastern flank, trying to boost what it had before the enhanced forward presence, so reinforcing it and introducing the enhanced forward presence to the countries that didn't have it before, like in Slovakia, or activating the NATO response force, etc., sending additional American troops to Europe. I think these are having the planes activated at the moment. So this is all a very proportionate response and to what is happening. I'll stop here.
I see there was also a question in the chart that goes more into the direction of what are the scenarios that are on the table of Western governments at the moment. So what is Western governments are ready to do in the case of Russia will impose a partition of Ukraine, create or a kind of fake government, as Olexiy called it, will be introduced, installed on Ukrainians. Are there any options that are currently discussed in the Western capitals that go beyond this kind of tactical situation and have a more strategic perspective? André, probably you know more. Maryna?
Well, not really, to be honest. I think there's really, as kind of problematic as this sounds, there's really a lot of shock and awe still. Yeah, I don't have the impression that there are really kind of proposals prepared how we can solve this, how we can get out of this. I also rather hear analysis of how we came there instead of how to get out now. Is also, I think, what's to blame is also, shock and awe. Who would have thought that Russians would also attack Lviv or Ivano-Frankivsk with missiles, right? This basically already kind of kills this plan of speaking about a partition of Ukraine. Obviously, Russians have much different plans and ambitions, right? Yeah. I'm not sure whether, yesterday I was also a little bit, what made me a little bit kind of thinking, and what was shocking me was when I saw, I will not tell the name, an Austrian professor in German news who said in an interview very much towards the end of this interview that the West should have taken the opportunity maybe in an ethically responsible way to offer Russia neutrality of Ukraine, to enforce neutrality on Ukraine, right? And this could have been avoided. I still think that people like this, they haven't understood really what this is about. This is not about neutrality. The Kremlin used the grammar, the word of the simple term neutrality in order to cover its real interest in Ukraine. And what its real interest in Ukraine is what we now see. What he now puts his army behind, Vladimir Putin, and this is total control of Ukraine. Yeah? Neutrality was always only a smokescreen, in order to somehow make the West believe that Ukraine could be a Finland or a new Switzerland, a bridge towards East and West, right? We can then soon forget about. Yeah, and then when the West has forgotten about it, he applies all his other instruments, beneath the military card to get the country under control. yeah, as he was doing as he was doing before 2014, yeah, when the Party of Regions still existed, was just another instrument, yeah, to undermine Ukrainian statehood. Yeah. So I don't see this currently. The cards are laying on the table. We know exactly what Putin wants right now. And either we begin to coerce him, yeah, deter him, yeah, as problematic as this might sound now locally on the ground in Ukraine, but either we do this, yeah, or we will lose Ukraine. Yeah, this is it.
Maryna, what are your impressions? Is there any strategic view in UK and US on what next?
I'm sure there is, and there are the discussions behind the closed doors, and taking into consideration all kinds of scenarios ranging from more positive to very negative. They are not communicated openly, so we wouldn't hear what the UK government or any other government, you know, thinks to do in case if the government in Ukraine is toppled. So, I mean, what we are doing now is as at the moment, yeah, and the whole diplomacy of those countries is aimed at the preventing those worst case scenarios. So, but I mean, the military planners, contingency planning is, of course, is there or should be there at least. So, if yeah, I'll stop here. I just see lots of other interesting questions in the chat, and I'm very tempted, you know, to connect and the bridges. But you know, it's up to you. Which one?
Go on.
Yeah, I mean,
you can pick up.
Yeah, because talking about, you know, what Putin wants in Ukraine, about the regime change in Ukraine, and how we got to this idea. It's basically, you know, this looking at hearing his speeches about the goal of this whole operation, as he called it, is to demilitarize and to denazify Ukraine. And, you know, if we think a bit about that, what this can mean, this probably is in line with Kremlin's narrative that Ukraine is a brotherly nation controlled by junta, by military, by fascists. So if his thinking is along these lines at the moment, he thinks then he needs to change the government in Kyiv, to put the pro-Russian, Russia-friendly government, the government which is, so this can be the goal, you know, when he speaks about the denazifying the Ukrainian society. But also this could entail a persecution of all people who think in different terms, unfortunately, and mass purges. And we see already that our initial hopes that the civilian society will, you know, stay intact and it will not be harmed or targeted. We see already that it's not the case. And in case of course, of the insurgency, large-scale insurgency, civilian population is inevitably going to be targeted, and, you know, with the huge losses of the human life. But the bridge I wanted to make is that I see the Peter Wardwald's question about actually what is going to happen with the regime in Russia, connected to the developments in Ukraine. And I mean, this is a part of the question that we've been pondering about for years. What is going to be this, you know, strike to the Putin's regime that is going, you know, to start to shake the foundations of his regime? And I mean, we cannot argue with any, you know, we don't have definitive answers. But I believe that, you know, in his age, this has been a very grave miscalculation that he's made. Yes, there can be whatever successes in the military front, in the battlefield over there. But in the midterm, longer term, this has been a disastrous decision, a miscalculation, a huge erroneous judgment, you know, lapse of judgment in all respects why it's doing this. As I mentioned in the beginning, getting bogged down there in Ukraine is not something that is going really to cement Putin's regime or is going to benefit Russian nation as a whole in any respect. So I think that probably we are not going to see, the collapse of the regime. I mean, we talked about this many times. If there is a really strong opposition there, if those anti-war protests really can mobilize Russian population, to really go and say enough, it can happen, not now. But I mean, I'm on the optimistic side here. I think in the long term, what we are seeing, the repercussions of this disastrous decision, they will echo very badly on the regime itself, because I believe that it is going to feel what is happening, and the Western response, and it can be very much that in the next decade or years we can see some fundamental shifts there.
André, what is your take on this? So we changed the discourses from crisis to the war, but is this probably, if we are going back to the crisis, actually Russia's crisis? Or the crisis of Putin regimes?
Yeah, in the end, yes. In the end, yes. I mean, I think we all agree that there are different levels on which you can discuss this confrontation over the years. But I think in the end, and this is also what I'm trying to make people aware of more in Germany, is that Russia is the aggressor here, and even if you have, and I'm more than willing to discuss those views, even if you accept the fact that, or even if you accept Putin's talk about security guarantees, about a security architecture in Europe not benefiting Russia at all, putting Russia under pressure in a way, not including Russia. Even if you accept that to a degree, you also have to accept first and foremost that this is not a way to address those issues in which he currently behaves. Yeah? And that this way, this invasion of Ukraine, the repercussions this has also for Ukrainian society, for civil society, for civilians right now, that this is, or this doesn't, it doesn't enhance the trust in Putin as a responsible European style or any style decision maker. Right? I mean, how can we really talk with him about security guarantees, about new arms control treaties, negotiate all this with him, if he betrays us in such a fashion, if he is willing to deploy force against innocent people? How is all this kind of, how can you make a connection between this? Yeah. I like a lot what Maryna said, and I agree with one argument that one of the big problems in the West is that it has bought into Putin's grand man standing strategy. Yeah. So I'm meeting a lot of people telling me openly, even academics, that Putin is basically the manifestation of 21st century statecraft. Yeah, even if they're critical about what Russia does, there's an admiration of what Putin does. And I share Maryna's view that we need to look more into the possible mistakes, the very risks he takes, right? And not be stunned by his grand man standing, by his taking action, taking control of things, because I think this is one of his main advantages, is that he always acts first, right? And that the West mostly is forced to react somehow. right? And I think we really need to change our perspective on this. He makes mistakes. He is only a human being. He's an isolated human being. Yeah, he will increasingly make mistakes, misjudgments, as Maryna says, right? And we need to look closer into this and look at this as opportunities for getting to act ourselves, right? So this kind of propaganda strategy to make Putin to almost kind of attach non-human forces to him, right? This is something which was very, unfortunately, very successful in the West. On the other hand, Ina, and also Maryna, you know, we need also to understand, putting all these positive scenarios on the side, our hopes, this is very necessary, but we also need to see about whom we are up to. It's not only Putin, it is a coalition of authoritarians worldwide. Yeah, and Putin was very clever. Now I'm again, but I have to give this to him. Yeah, he was clever, very clever in steering this coalition, in even kind of in even putting himself into a kind of leadership position. Yeah, although if we look at China, if we look at some other rising powers, you know, from the capabilities, Russia should be one among many here and not in the lead, but he is in the lead. Yeah, somehow. Yeah, and this coalition is very powerful. It is very powerful because those people have a lot to fear. Yeah, they fear the West, but they also fear their own societies, and this makes them, this enables them, yeah, also psychologically to revert to the most kind of evil instruments, and strategies we can only imagine. Yeah? And this is where we have to become harder, more hard-nosed, yeah? Not giving in, really studying the discourse, really, yeah? And inventing our own instruments. Our instruments are just not fitting here in this situation. We have to accept that we have enemies. Yeah, they only kind of they create the smokescreen of negotiation and diplomacy. Yeah. Because they also know that in our countries there are a lot of people who, for whom diplomacy is the only imaginable instrument in foreign policy. Yeah, but what we have to do is to accept the fact that we have strong enemies. Yeah, against which only other instruments than diplomacy will work. Yeah, deterrence, coercion, even active coercion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think you also addressed another interesting point about authoritarian learning, that other authoritarian regimes like China could learn out of this Russia's aggressive example towards Ukraine, like this, and kind of emulate it somewhere else. Yes, so and this is a kind of real danger, that this diffusion of these practices will go far, and new kind of tactical and strategic instruments are necessary to address it. Okay, so we already close to the time that was allocated, to the end of the time that was allocated. So probably let me ask you some rather personal question to you as political scientists. So what did you learn from this crisis as political scientists, kind of dealing with security issues, dealing with Ukraine and Russia? So what a kind of new eye-opening moments you have there? Do you think it's just an ordinary case in history, or it is the kind of the event that would deserve a special chapter in our political science textbooks?
Very complex question, because we are all still, you know, digesting what is happening and trying to understand what we feel. I think one of the lessons that we all feel now is that of the need to be humble in terms of our predictions and our expectations. And working on Russia for a number of years, I've realized that sometimes those expectations do not work, or our hopes sometimes they triumph over the experience actually. And so what we hear and see now at the moment is the proof of that we were hoping that we are living in a completely different setting, and we were judging Putin's actions through the prism, through our system of coordinates, and from the values that we share, and I think one of the lessons I'm taking from what is happening now is that this system of coordinates does not necessarily work. And with the authoritarian leaders, it's a completely different perception of the world and perception of the value of the human life, and perception what is legitimate, what is allowed, permissible. So I think this is something that I'm taking out from all this, and understanding that we need probably to update a bit our expectations on what can happen in this part of the world. And we were operating with a bit of like outdated and too liberal framework, looking at Russian actions.
André?
Yeah, guys, this is a brilliant question, a brilliant last question. Look, I'm working now in a German institute, which is very much like between politics and science located. That's a very peculiar institution. And one of the things which makes me wonder the most in the last weeks, in the last months, is that from the German universities, the chairs of political science, international relations, there's nothing coming. Yeah? They are not part of the debate, And why is this the case? This is the case because, unfortunately, academia is too self-referential. Yeah? In the fields we are working on, at least. I do not want to speak about. Yeah, I'm speaking about political science, international relations. It's too self-referential. Look at the debates we have been building up for years. Global governance, for example. Right? I mean, look, guys. We need more kind of empirical grounding. We need more applied political science, right? It's really a shame to see, that all the brilliant professors of political science we have admired for so long, that they are now not really able to give answers on current events, because they have for years kind of led debates, which from our point of view right now, they seem at least partially obsolete. So we need more empirical grounding here. We need a more applied political science, more applied international relations. And we need also people telling others the truth, right? I mean, I don't share the opinion that we are now back to a 19th century international context, that all this, what has been built up since the Second World War, international organizations, that this is now, also kind of totally marginal or even absolute. I don't share this, but we have to tell people the truth. We have to tell them that the international system is still full of anarchical places, that the reality is not that global governance and adherence to international law spans around the globe, right? We are in a much more competitive context of different kind of interpretations of international law, for example. We are in a context where great power politics plays a huge role still. And it's not only like in the case of Russia now to the disadvantage of peace and cooperation. Instead of this, we need great power politics. It's a necessary instrument of the international order, right? And this is something we need to talk about. We need to talk about more, right? And from this point of view, I'm really kind of, I think this can be, it should be a game changer, or it should be at least a reason for more substantial critique of current political science and international relations. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for all these kinds of insights into what is going on in Western capitals. And I really kind of appreciate your last comments, because even in this kind of dark situation, it points to something that we in academia can change, can do something. Yes, probably to help this or similar conflicts and crises not to happen, yeah, or kind of lead to better outcomes. So thank you for joining us today on this short-term note. We appreciate it very much and hope to stay in touch.
Thank you all for your attention. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.